Hey, boxing fans, this is AJ with just my 2 cents, and I just have to comment on this fight. Errol Spence Jr. versus Tim Tszyu, and I think it's pronounced Tszyu. A lot of people are saying Zoo, Tim Tszyu, but that's okay. By the way, I really was a big fan of his dad, Costa Tszyu, in the back in the day. I wish he had a rematch with Ricky Haddon, but it is what it is. I think he disappeared after the Ricky Haddon defeat, but I digress. So I'm talking about this fight. Interestingly enough, if you rewind the time, if you go back in time 3 years ago, right before Errol Spence Jr. fought Terrence Crawford, this would have been the big fight. Like, let's say we went back to early 2023. Tim Tszyu wasn't as well known. He's not been as well known in the popular media, but he was looking really good. He was undefeated, and so was Errol Spence Jr., and this would have been a major fight back then. Now it's a fight, a crossroads between two guys whose careers are in tatters, right? And there's a couple things that stick out to me about this. Well, let me start with, there's a couple things that stick out to me about Errol Spence Jr. First off, I'm a big fan of Errol Spence Jr. He's a great fighter, but I did feel that he had one major flaw. And the major flaw that I did feel he had is if you watch him fight, he leans a little bit too forward. He's a little bit off balance when he throws a punch. It's almost like he's leaning into the punch with his upper body, but his lower body's in the same place. In other words, there doesn't seem to be a lot of coordination between his upper body and his lower body. Just basically seemed to off balance a lot. And even before he fought Terrence Crawford, I'd picked Terrence Crawford easily to beat Errol Spence Jr. And I know somebody's going to say, well, now you know that what happened, you can just say that now. But no, really, I picked Terrence Crawford because Terrence Crawford was, number one, far more balanced and a better footwork, and was defensively better minded than Errol Spence Jr. Okay? Now, Errol Spence Jr. has a good defense, and Errol Spence Jr., the positive about him is that he fights really well when he's fighting tall, when he's staying on the outside and jabbing and looking for openings, which he actually did in the first round against Terrence Crawford. Errol Spence Jr. does that well. Now let's go talk about Tim Tszyu for a second, and I believe the name is Tszyu. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. If I butchered his name, I'm sorry, but I believe it's Tszyu. I was a big fan of his dad. I mentioned that before. In the early 2000s, especially when his dad was just taking on guys like Zab Judah and just with that straight right. He came with that straight right. I mean, he had a 1-2 like nobody else has had in boxing. But I do believe, and to be honest with you, let me start off by saying this. I thought Tim Tszyu was going to be the future of boxing. I thought this was one of the most talented boxers back in 2023. Up until he lost. But actually, I thought he was very talented. I didn't not notice his flaws like I noticed Errol Spence Jr. However, I do notice something when he fought Errol Spence Jr. What I notice is in his other fights that he lost is that he tends to walk straight in without defense. He tends to literally walk his opponent down by walking into them, and without being defensively minded as he should. It almost looks like he's trying to prove he's a tough guy when he's boxing, that he can just walk into somebody's punch. Look, it doesn't bother me. That's a major flaw, and that's something that happened in the Errol Spence Jr. fight. Now, this photo doesn't really show that, but if you watch the fight carefully, Tim Tszyu walks in on Errol Spence Jr. with his hands too low. In other words, he's susceptible to being hit more than I thought. Now, do I know that now? Yeah. Did I know that before? Not so much. I'll be honest with you, I did not see the flaws in Tim Tszyu as much as I do now when I'm looking a little bit closer. I did recognize that Errol Spence Jr. is off balance, but Tim Tszyu does have his own flaws. Now, going forward with both of these guys, obviously Errol Spence Jr. has retired. That's unfortunate. I thought he should have took a tune-up fight. I don't know what he's doing jumping in to one of the best fighters in the weight class and maybe in the sport. Tim Tszyu still has a bright future, but I thought I thought Errol Spence Jr. should have took a tune-up fight for sure. And that made a big difference also because it's 3 years. Look, boxers are not the same if they take a 3-year hiatus. They never have been in the past. Who can we think of? We can think of Muhammad Ali. We can think of Mike Tyson as really good examples of not being the same after you take a huge break from the sport. So odd that he would just jump back in, but kudos to him for taking the best, challenging himself like that. There's ring rust. That's one of the reasons he lost. He's also lost because, as I mentioned before, he's off balance. Tim Tszyu, he's still flawed. He needs to put his hands up. He needs to be defensively minded and try to box a little bit more on the outside, use his strengths of boxing outside, work his way in to the inside, not walk into the inside. He's too susceptible to being hit for as good as he is with his really good right, left, and body work. He's a good inside fighter. So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on the two fighters, on the fight. Basically, I thought Errol Spence Jr. should have took a tune-up fight. Shouldn't have just jumped back in like that. But the path may be laid out that he was going to retire anyways. So, good luck to him. Thank you, Errol Spence Jr., for all the fights. And Tim Tszyu is going to be excited to see him going forward and who he's going to fight next. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Thanks.